I'm joined by Madam Sisi Kagaba, who is the Executive Director of the Anti-Corruption Coalition. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you very much and good morning.
Good morning. We saw this report, and during the period of July and December last year, the investigation started. The office of the IGG went out to do these investigations, and during the same period 1,399 cases were presented to them, and out of this only 20 were arrested and 11 convicted.
Okay. I think one of the things that we need to understand are the various challenges that are related to court sessions, because when you read the same report, it actually does provide for recommendations, because the IG obviously can take people to court, but you need to understand that there are certain issues that are beyond the IG, because one, at times there are court adjournments, but then at times there are already existing case backlogs, because if you're looking at the time frame of the report, you need to understand that there are already prior cases in this same court where we're actually taking these issues. And I know one of the issues that the report talks about is recommending to have more magistrates, to have more judges in especially quite a number of courts, and of course having more judges actually in the Court of Appeal, because that is where they tend to appeal. So the IGG, much as they're supposed to convict and do all these other things, it is a chain, because the IGG may not necessarily influence or have a say on what is going to happen within a particular court, because I may be a judge and I may not be available, or even my calendar, my diary, I not really have a slot for you at that particular time. So one of the things that I think needs to be sorted out is the whole issue of case backlog that is actually happening in most of the court, because I think that also affects the number of cases that are going to be handled by the IG's office.
So the major issue is the case backlog.
Exactly, and I know the judiciary is still grappling with it. I know they've tried to put some measures in place, but the case backlog doesn't only affect anti-corruption cases, but it also affects other cases. I mean, it won't only be corruption cases, because remember that people still go to these same courts. But now, as long as there are already existing cases that have not yet been disposed of, so you realize that this issue is going to continuously be there. And of course, to some extent, it does defeat the fight against corruption, because we know that justice delayed is justice denied. So if the IG has done its part and the case has been probably lodged in court, but remember now, before this case comes on the cause list, that has to happen in the courts of law, where the IG may not necessarily have so much say on that.
So if we are to ever get to a point whereby we're comfortable that people who are found guilty of crime, the crime of corruption, if we're ever to get to that point, then we have to sort out the issue of backlog of cases in the judiciary, in the court system, and putting more personnel there. Obviously,
yes, it's one of the things that has to be sorted out, because you know, when the matter goes to court and a decision is given, so obviously if a decision is given against, you know, whichever party, that decision is supposed to be enforced. And if the other party is not convinced, then you can appeal. But during the fact that a particular decision has been given, then it can be enforced, and probably that is when you're going to see money is being, because when you look at the IG's report, the monies that they've been able to get through court awards. Now, some of those court awards obviously come about when a matter has been had to conclusion and a decision has been given. So in order for us to see more of such issues, I think the courts of law have to be beefed up with the necessary personnel that are actually going to handle some of the cases that the IG's officers bring before court.
But if that is sorted out, will we be at a good place? Because many say that it's not just a matter of us not having enough personnel in the court system. There's the issue of political goodwill as well.
Yes. Now, the IG tables this, gives these reports to Parliament. We need to ask ourselves, when was the last time Parliament actually ever debated this report? And it is rather, I don't want to say annoying, but you have this huge Parliament, and it actually doesn't debate the report, because, and I think to some extent it does undermine the mandate of the IG, because the IG's report has quite a number of recommendations, and the fact that it is a legal obligation for the IG to actually present these reports to Parliament, and if Parliament just keeps on shelving them, of course, well, they may have their reasons as to why they have a backlog, as to why they're failing to handle some of these cases, some of these reports. But I think as citizens, Parliament owes it to the citizens, because we're taxpayers, they're paid very well, so we actually expect them to go through this report and recommendations acted upon. But at the same time also, we expect the implicated ministries, departments and agencies to actually also take action, because the same reports will talk of particular accounting officers who have failed to take action against some of the recommendations that the IG is bringing out. And to some extent that obviously does undermine the office of the IG. But not only the IG, because if you look at the Auditor General's reports as well, they also face the same challenges, whereby the issues that the Auditor General continuously brings out, and it's rather sad that the same government, the same ministries, departments and agencies that are working for the same government are actually undermining each other.
Right.
Because I would think that if the government is really committed to fight corruption, and I'm the IG and I'm the Auditor General, I would expect that my recommendations to another MDA should actually be enforced. But if you read some of these reports, the issues that keep on recurring, and that has actually created what you call impunity, because some of these accounting officers either deliberately undermine these entities or they just actually don't care. And it also becomes very difficult, like for the Auditor General to start chasing these same guys whom the recommendations.
So we can't just point our fingers to the IGG in totality.
Actually, it would really be very, very unfair to actually only point fingers at the IG without looking at other circumstances that are hindering the work of the IG.
Okay, we are also joined by Mr. Simon Lokodo, who is the Ethics and Integrity Minister. Good morning, sir. We have lost him. We'll get him for you. But we saw the IGG, and this is a story that we saw just a few weeks ago, and many went up in arms to say that, are you putting your resources in the right area, especially now that you're saying that you don't have enough resources to fight corruption? And this was when we saw the Deputy IGG, Mr. George Bamugemerere, come out to say that we are launching the caravan to create awareness across the country, and of course this started the eastern region, and we have him on record. Let's take a look.
In this regard, the Inspectorate of Government is working with the ministries, departments and agencies and local governments, urging them to each establish local complaints handling mechanisms. The intention is to reduce the number of complaints that are addressed to the Inspectorate of Government, which could be dealt with at source. This time, we are taking the eastern route, starting in Kampala, Jinja, Uganda, Tororo, Busia, Mbale, and we'll end up in Kapchorwa. And the purpose is to engage local governments and citizens in boardroom sessions, barazas, radio talk shows, and these will be held along the drive.
Was this a well thought out strategy? Is this what we need at this point in time?
You know, of course what the IG was doing, launching the Anti-Corruption Week activities, and of course we know that annually we're supposed to do that. I think for me it is, when you look at one of the reasons that the Deputy IG is giving, is to reduce the number of complaints. Again, when you look at the report, you'll actually realize that a huge number of cases are actually coming from the local government. And then also, as you keep moving and engaging with the ordinary people, you realize that some of them actually don't know where to report to, others don't even know what actually amounts to a corruption related issue. So some of the complaints that we see in the IG's report, some of them may not necessarily actually have needed to come before the IG if people actually knew what needed to be done. So I think, and the fact that one of the mandate of the IG is to sensitize. So I think for me this is a well thought out issue, especially when it comes to sensitizing the masses on what they need to do, where they need to report the various issues relating to corruption.
Okay, we do have Mr. Simon Lokodo, the Ethics and Integrity Minister, on phone now. Good morning, sir.
Good morning to you.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning. The question is on corruption and the fight against corruption in the country. And people are saying the government is not doing so much to fight this particular vice. Of course, now with case and study, the particular mobile money taxation that was introduced just a few days ago, people are saying we have no issue to pay taxes, but the issue is year in, year out, we grapple with corruption. There is zero accountability. We're never told this money that you pay to the ombudsman what it does. So what's your view on this?
First of all, it is not true to assert that government is doing nothing to fight corruption. I've always insisted that the strong will and good intent of the government to fight corruption is very evident in the institutions that they are put in place for nothing else but to fight corruption. Inspectorate of Government, Office of the Auditor General, PPDA, DPP, CIID, Inspectorate Local Government, Inspectorate Public Service, Anticorruption Court. All those institutions, to name but a few, are only a sign that manifests the strong will and good intent of the government to fight corruption. The second one is the good and excellent legal framework that we have. Probably Uganda is the best country in the world with an excellent legal framework purposely set and put there in order to fight corruption.
And if we have...
Then practically,
yes,
you see also the office of the president always coming out with interventions, again denouncing, condemning, and shunning corruption. You've got these special commissions, you've got these special, institutions put there to follow up these high-level cases of corruption. All that is only to tell you corruption has no room in this government.
Sir, we have all these structures and strategies that the government has put in place, even institutions, to fight corruption in the country. But the question many people are asking, and we are always on ground and we get these views from Omuntu Wawansi and the people of Uganda, what they're asking is, if we have all these structures in place, why is it taking so long to see people, especially civil servants, who are involved in corruption brought to book? Case in study, the IGG gave out its report and presented it to Parliament last week, and we saw that the theft of government money and assets topping that particular report. So why is it taking so long? There's evidence, there's investigations that have gone into this particular, kind of provisions. So why is it taking so long to bring to book such people?
Fine. First thing is to identify the graphs. And then the second one is to react and do what it needs in order to punish it. Now, yes, you're right by saying it's taking long for government or institutions of government to fight corruption to react and bring to book these identified individuals who have been confirmed beyond reasonable doubt that they're involved in the graft. Unfortunately, our laws again provide for what we call natural justice. You just have to take a case, drop in court, adjudicate, and put that person. It is provided for that the person accused defends himself or herself. And so this process, the process of the legalities, is the one which unfortunately stops us. All right? Then you know what again is provided for our laws, that standard of proof beyond reasonable doubt.
Then, sir, don't you think...
Yes. Our people are not very, very, very patriotic, and when they denounce a case, they are fearing to stand before courts of law and witness as the one who has seen and known that such and such a thing has happened. But so it looks again as with a dilemma on how to proceed.
Mr. Lokodo, you have actually said that many people fear standing to, be... Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now, sir?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Very poorly.
Okay. The technical team is working on it. Can you hear me now?
Better, yeah.
All right. You have actually said that many people shy away from testifying on corruption cases once they bring them, to the fore. But many say that we fear because when we come out to report these cases, then the cases are turned against us, and we are seen to be the people who are the, offenders. So what do you have to say about that with regards to that, and also involving the young people in the fight against corruption?
It's not true that when one report gets implicated. On the contrary, we have got the Whistleblowers Protection Act, which obliges us to protect that individual and even do whatever it costs to make sure that he or she is not brought to harm. Right? So we all strongly encourage and really encourage citizens to denounce, pronounce, and report corruption. And in fact, my complaint has always been this corruption is not a single-handed activity. It is never executed and completed by an individual. It is a systemic move. It's an organized crime. So if only along the way someone, comes out and refuses to join the process, this thing will be stopped, or a person who is in the verge of doing it will be caught. So I've always said apathy is the reason why corruption is perpetuating and continuing to eat and gnaw our country. If only as many citizens of this country would speak loud and clear and denounce the sham and condemn corruption, corruption will find its way out of our country.
And how best are you working with the young people just to ensure that we fight this corruption? Because we know that Uganda is a young country. A majority of the population is the youth. So what is the government doing to ensure that there's a safe space where people can whistleblow and troubleshoot whenever they sense corruption?
Very good. What we're doing now is to involve all the citizens in the fight against corruption. So we have got what I call in my directorate Anticorruption Public-Private Partnership. We link up with all the stakeholders, youth, civil society organizations, NGOs, individuals, institutions of government, schools, etc., academia, etc. And we say, please, let's all fight this guy. And our best friend, the surest person who can give us a message which is far-fetching is the youth. Because 75% of our population, unfortunately, is youth, or fortunately for that matter. And these are the people who engage, who want to engage. Fortunately, some have come forward and they're even offering to be volunteers in informing us on where a possible corruption act is about to commence or is in the verge of being completed.
We know that the court is grappling with the issue to do with the backlog of cases, and that's why most of these cases, most of these criminals are actually not brought to book. So what is the government doing to address that issue of the court not being well equipped in terms of personnel to look into these cases?
Great. Your good observation, and indeed it is true, not only in corruption-related cases, but even in other civil cases, there is a lot of backlog because of our limited personnel in the judiciary. Fortunately, recently, Parliament passed law approving at least another 8 judges. It is in our intention that we recruit more magistrates, we recruit more judges so that we can manage the backlog of this case. And in the case of the anti-corruption, we also want to improve the numbers of the judges there, and not only have it in Kampala, in Kololo, but have a mobile anti-corruption court. So that if there are issues in, say, in the north, we go and sit in Gulu for 2 weeks. In the south, we go and sit somewhere, sit in Mbarara for 2 weeks. And in that way, we can probably exhaust the backlog that is on our table today.
Okay, sir, before I let you go, most of these proposals you're talking about seem to be work in progress, things that the government is working towards. And of course, that has been the answers that we've been getting from government time and again. And so people are asking, when will we just get one person to act as an example, whereby the government prosecutes and actually we see that for sure government is working? Just one person to act as an example to the rest. When will it take? How long will it take for that to happen?
For your information, we have hit some targets. You must have heard of accounting officers who have been interdicted or even altogether sentenced and have to refund the money that the court will. So biting has been going on. Only that is not as massive because, again, of the process of concluding a case. we have to go through a rigorous process and ensure that there is no reverse of the old thing. When one appeals, can overturn the old thing and put it again against government. That's where unfortunately we have fallen a couple of times.
Okay, sir.
We have to refund or repay massively persons who we had sentenced for or condemned having been convicted of corruption, and the case turned around and we are made to pay for it.
Okay, thank you so much for your views this morning. We truly wish you a blessed day. Thank you so much. Back in studios.
Yeah.
So there's a backlog. They're saying that Parliament has already approved 80 judges to come on board. But still, even that law space is grappling with corruption. Just the other day, there's a story that we ran, and most of these law people, the lawyers, are saying that, you know what, the truth is we survive out of the small money we are given from our litigants, by our litigants. So if we're to fight corruption, and it's the courts to help us bring these people to book, and them themselves are also corrupt, where are we heading?
You see, one of the challenges actually that we've seen is that the judiciary itself, there are some rotten apples or rotten eggs within the judiciary. There are particular judicial officers, some of them that have engaged in issues relating to corruption. And you see, again, it isn't surprising that at times people fear to come and actually testify. You know, one of the things that the minister talked about was the whistleblowers. We need to ask ourselves, how many people actually know about the Whistleblowers Act? And then secondly, who is supposed to offer protection as per the Whistleblowers Act? Because of course it talks about the police and some agencies, but do people actually trust these agencies? Because if I'm supposed to offer you protection, but guess what, I don't actually trust you to offer me protection, obviously I'll not come as a witness. And one of the things again that the report talks about, that people fear, people actually end up not coming to testify, because they actually do not trust that entire system. If I know a particular magistrate or judge has been compromised, then why should I actually bother to appear before that judge or before that magistrate? I know as an organization we did some bit of research, undergone investigations, and we're able to actually know which people actually, particular magistrates that are actually asking for bribes from people.
And
but
did you whistleblow?
Of course we did. We read, but again we're still waiting for action to be taken. And one of the challenges that we see, of course, you write to the Judicial Service Commission and they'll tell you we're going to investigate. And of course the investigations take time, and eventually I think they're overtaken by events. Now, that is rather unfortunate, and that is why actually people will still find issues with trust in the judiciary. And again, the minister talks of political, and actually Uganda has very many good laws, but you see, the fight against corruption is not about having all these very many laws. It's not about having all these very many institutions, but there's how strong are these institutions? Are these institutions independent? How are these institutions respected? I agree when the minister says that you have all MDAs and all, but you have the same, like we talked about, that IGG comes up with recommendations, some government entities undermine the IGG. We have the president himself coming up with the Tweheyo Commission. Now, some of those obviously undermine the office of the IG, because if I'm the IG and you're coming up with a small 3-man or 4-man committee to do the work that I'm actually doing, I think for me some of those things actually go back to undermining some of these agencies that government has put in place.
You've actually said that some of these cases are actually brought to the fore, but the issue is it takes so long for these cases to be investigated, and they're passed by, time. And so with regards to just looking into the issue of bureaucratic processes, what can be done? Because it's in those delays that some of the people are actually compromised in the process, and justice is denied.
The challenge, of course, that we have is that you cannot avoid bureaucracy. Of course, to some extent, bureaucracy is supposed to act as a check and balance in particular agencies, but yet at the same time, the same bureaucracy has actually been used by other people to actually extort money from people, because you need to expedite the process and people need to move. So if I have a document and it's supposed to go through 5 different people, if I pay something and actually moves quickly, then obviously I'm going to do that. So of course we've seen instances whereby bureaucracy has actually been a hindrance in the fight against corruption. But I think for me, because the bureaucracy will always be there, but the issue is commitment. Is our government actually committed? Is it just a rhetoric? Let me give an example of the Leadership Code Amendment Act. That, I mean, when we read the IGG's report, initially, the Leadership Code provided for a situation whereby if I'm a leader and I declare my wealth, then you can actually investigate the wealth of my spouse, the wealth of my children. then you have these honorable members of parliament who in their wisdom decide to remove that. And I'm thinking, seriously, guys, because we know what happens in Uganda.
But the IGG says come next year that will be reintroduced.
Yes, but you see,
it will be fought.
But you see, it is very unfortunate that you have members of parliament who decide actually to amend a law and remove, because it's a form of accountability. We know that people actually transfer properties in the names of their kids, in the names of their spouses. So for you, in your wisdom, to actually sit and think you're going to amend the law and you're only looking at yourself, because when these guys don't transfer properties within themselves, they transfer properties externally. So by you actually amending the law, I mean, it is so, I mean, it is actually rather surprising why in a situation where you're supposed to fight corruption and members of parliament think that in their wisdom they're going to amend the act and remove.
But what can we as citizens do? Because it seems like they have the power to amend and to abolish some of these laws. So what can we do?
Well, I think as citizens we still need to hold these people accountable, because at the end of the day we're the ones who actually vote them in. I think what we need to do is more of a civic engagement, more of ensuring that we put our feet down and actually put pressure on some of these people, because we've seen whereby particular citizens have put pressure on particular members of parliament and they've been able to bolt. So I think for me what we need to do is to identify, and either we start isolating them, but I think it's going to be very, very important that as citizens we go back and we strategize on how to engage and how to actually ensure that we make it very comfortable for them being in parliament.
Wow. Wow. Already we have the issue of the Commission into Land Inquiry, a Commission of Inquiry into Land Matters coming out to say that we don't have enough funds to run operations, so we are coming to a halt. But as we come to a close, I need your comment on this. If an entity or an arm of government is to be given finances to do X task, would it be prudent for that to be followed up, accountability and audits to be done as well? Because I think that's where the loophole is.
The audits are actually done by the Office of the Auditor General. But of course the challenge again is that how often are the Auditor General's recommendations actually also taken up? Because if these recommendations are actually taken up, then we'll be able to see an improvement in service delivery. Right. Because remember that whenever the Auditor General comes up with an audit report and audit issues, at the back end of it there's an issue of service delivery. Monies were given for a particular purpose and probably this purpose has not been achieved, then obviously there's a lag in service delivery. So unless issues like reports of the Auditor General actually taken up, unless reports of the IG are actually taken up, we're still going to have these audits. Because what the IG and Auditor General do and other agencies do is to actually follow up, is actually to do an audit of the monies that have been given. But if what they do is merely come up with reports and the reports are actually just shelved away, then we're not going to see anything. At the end of it all, we're just going to have our same government continuously talk of having agencies, continuously talk of having laws, but the same laws are not working, the same agencies that they're put in place are not working because the reports are not being enforced or not being implemented.
Wow. Madam Cisse Kagaba, thank you so much for joining us this morning, the ED of the Anti-Corruption Coalition. That has been the discussion. Keep your views coming. The hashtag is Morning at NTV, that's on Twitter. You can also stream us live and drop in your comments, NTV Uganda, that's on Facebook and YouTube. How can we take part in the fight against corruption in our country? Keep it here. Morning at NTV still continues.
Watching Morning at NTV.
50% bonus on data.
You mean if I buy 1 GB of data daily using Airtel Money, I get 500 MBs free?
Yes! 50% bonus on data recharges of Airtel Money.
Switch to Airtel Money to buy a data bundle and get 50% bonus back instantly.
Yes! 50% bonus back. Valid till midnight.